Tinubu government came into power on the first day, the president made a substantial statement, that's on the 29th of May, on the removal of subsidy, which has going to affect very critical aspects of our economy as a people, and our lives have been highly impacted. The government promised Nigerians a renewed hope, but the economic indicators in the past month are in the negative. Tonight, we have an exclusive conversation with the Honorable Minister of Finance and the Coordinating Minister of the Economy as we delve into the harsh realities facing the Nigerian economy since the Tinubu administration assumed office 1 year ago. Over the past year, Nigeria has witnessed a staggering decline in economic stability, with inflation rate soaring. It stands at about 33%. The naira plummeting in value and unemployment rate rising to an alarming rate. These figures highlight the severe financial strain on the average Nigerian, whose purchasing power has significantly diminished, leading to widespread hardship and discontent amongst Nigerians. Of course, the government is saying, give us some time. But the man who has been saddled with the responsibility of dealing with the economy and ensuring that Nigerians' lives are better as far as the economic powers is concerned, is the Minister of the Minister of Finance and the Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun. Earlier, I had a sit down with Mr. Wale Edun, and this is it. Thank you so much for the time, Honorable Minister. Let me begin tonight by asking you, it is a year since President Bola Tinubu was sworn into office as a man entrusted with a critical aspect of this administration's objectives. Can you briefly summarize what you would say has been your major achievement in your ministry since you took over as a Minister of Finance and the Coordinating Minister of the Economy?
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me for this very important conversation. I would say Mr. President has, in his first year, he has achieved relative stability of the economy. He has put it on a track of growth, and he has put together a package of intervention measures, and he's put together a package of measures in agriculture in particular, which need to be redoubled, they need to be re-emphasized, and they need to be further extended in order to have the full effect. So, on the one hand, the macroeconomic measures, which everybody knows, which were taken to save the economy basically, and bring it back from the edge of financial bankruptcy, and in the foreign exchange markets from chaos and basically a market that was stalled and it was illiquid. There was not enough supply coming in, and businesses were very frustrated. So clearly, the initial measures taken by Mr. President to stabilize the economy have led to an inflationary spike in terms of the cost of fuel, and secondly, in terms of the exchange rate, and also in terms of interest rates. The central bank defined as its core mandate to fight inflation, and the number one tool used for that is pushing up interest rates. In a nutshell, those were actions that were necessary, but that led to a spike in the cost of living for the ordinary Nigerian, as well as increased costs for businesses. However, those measures are beginning to bear fruit. At a time when interest rates are high, which normally means that businesses find it hard to borrow and invest, the economy is growing. People are finding sources of funding, sources of equity, including government putting in its own share of private public sector funding for infrastructure in particular, and that is helping to create jobs and grow the economy. But on the other hand, inflation, yes, it is high at 33.69%. Food inflation at 40.5% is worrisomely high. But the fact is that inflation is coming down month on month. It's down to about 2.3% month on month from nearly 3%. So it is slowing, and is expected to reduce as we have continued the dry season harvest, and then we go into the wet season harvest, that is the place to focus on, and a lot of emphasis is being placed on there to get agricultural output up, to get prices down, and that will be a big factor in bringing down inflation. But also, in order to ameliorate the effect of the initial pain that high elevated indices, like you said, interest rates, exchange rate, and so forth would cause, there has been an intervention program. And the first was the keenest, that is direct payment to Nigerians. In all, 75 million Nigerians, effectively 15 million households, was the program that was laid out. And what had happened is that it had to be reset. We all saw and we all know the experience. So the 75,000 naira immediate payment to Nigerian households so that they can go to the market and buy as an immediate emergency measure stalled at first, and now it has been put on track and is expected to really yield dividends in terms of pushing out that help to Nigerians.
Okay, Minister, if I may come in here, with what you have said, how then do you explain that all the indices and economic indicators are in the negative? And they have spiked in the last 1 year. They've gone so high just within a year of Tinubu's presidency. Inflation rate has soared, food inflation at 40%, exchange rate is gone so berserk now. Nothing seems to be looking good as far as the economic indicators are concerned. How do you explain all of that?
I think these measures, the necessary fallout or not surprising and a typical fallout from the measures that had to be taken. Higher interest rates to fight inflation and attract foreign currency, which was successful. In terms of inflation, as I said earlier, it is coming down. It's expected and projected to come down over the next few months. And as for in the other indices, the important thing is that the economy is actually growing. It is very rare to have a situation where the authorities, particularly the monetary authorities, set as their target fighting inflation, bringing down inflation and prices generally, and at the same time to have the economy growing. We do have that quarter by quarter. Compared to the first quarter last year, growth is up. It's up to about 2.98, virtually 3% per annum, above population growth compared to about 2.3% this time last year. So you do have the economy going in the right direction. And as I said earlier, we just need to stay the course. And in staying that course, amelioration, help must be given and is being given across the board. I've said what is going to help that is going to be given to farmers, help that's going to be given to consumers. There's also help for small businesses, for medium-scale businesses, and there is on Mr. President's table shortly, if by Monday, a economic stabilization plan that deals with the factors that are affecting big industry, big business, so that they too can stabilize, begin investing again, grow the economy, create jobs, and reduce poverty.
Minister, I like to tell you the truth. It's hard to convince Nigerians that you are indeed doing the right thing, considering the fact that their lives are becoming more and more difficult by the day. What would you say to the average person who is seeing a dramatic decline in his or her purchasing power since this government took over 1 year ago?
I would say that what we can look forward to in the weeks and even the months to come is an improvement in the situation. We can expect that food prices will come down, food availability will increase. That is the commitment and that is the focus of government. We particularly have, and I, in my role as a coordinating minister, have a group that's looking at, under the presidential panel on social investment programs, not only have we put in place a very robust and transparent system for paying people directly under the existing program, we are also now sitting together and looking at food availability and nutrition. And that involves not just, obviously, the Minister for Health and Social, Coordinating Minister for Social Welfare, Budget, and others. So we have a group that sits every week and focuses on providing additional food under these particular circumstances.
If I may follow up on some of the things that you have mentioned there, one thing that is scary now is this food inflation and skyrocketing price of commodities and price of food. And it's also concerning that it will continue to force Nigerians to reconsider a lot of things about how they live their lives and the quality of their lives. We are being told that they should tighten their belt in an already harsh economic condition. Are we facing a food security problem, Minister?
The food security problem is a worldwide phenomenon. 30% of the world's population, to a greater or lesser extent, is food insecure. We have our own situation in Nigeria, which we are focusing on. And I think the issue here is that these areas that are critical to Nigerians, provision of food and provision of cheaper transport, and so on, and creation of jobs. Those are being focused on. As I said, special funding and intervention for agriculture. And in terms of the growth, when you look at the investment in infrastructure, what I would call the jump starting of a massive infrastructure program, that is the way to creation of jobs and a multiplier effect on the economy to get the economy going again. And it is a rarity as you are trying to fight inflation to get the economy growing. But that is what is happening. And the support that is coming is not just Nigerian businesses that are investing. It is also the internationally, there is support coming. There is agreement generally that Nigeria is on the right track, and that if we stay this course, we will beat inflation, we will get growth going up even more, we will create jobs, and people will find their lives easier.
Let me quickly jump in here, and I'd like to know, there's been a lot of debate as to the decision of President Bola Tinubu on the first day of assumption of office when he said subsidy is gone. And if I may ask you, do you think, with the benefit of hindsight, that maybe this government could have had a more concrete strategies and plans for fuel subsidy removal before the announcement of the single policy that has jolted all what we have in this country, economy-wise, into a shock, and things that we are seeing now, and it's now been so difficult to recover since the last 12 months?
I think the fuel subsidy removal, which was the first major policy announcement of Mr. President, was necessary. It was overdue, and it had placed the country in a fiscally unmanageable situation. Today, although this is not what the average Nigerian sees, the revenue of government, when you look at my role basically as the government treasurer, as opposed to maybe the coordinator of the economy, we have totally revamped and renewed government revenue. The procedures that we use now mean that we are collecting virtually all that should be coming to government from various agencies, revenue earning departments, and parastatals. And that is increasing, and that includes major earnings in foreign exchange, which were not being had before. And so, as a result of what's been done on the revenue, the government is paying its way. Nigeria is no longer living on borrowed money, is no longer living on drawing ways and means. When we have international debts, obligations to international companies or banks, like for instance, the shareholding in African Development Bank, the shareholding payments to the Islamic Development Bank, hundreds of millions of dollars, we have made them on time. We have kept the reputation of the country intact, and that is ongoing. We don't expect. We have paid down 7.3 trillion naira of outstanding, overdue ways and means obligation. That is overdraft at central bank. And so the government is really put in place a robust mechanism, not just on revenue, but expenditure to ensure that Nigerians' money is spent visibly, transparently, and accountably. These measures are not ones that are easy to implement. Change management is always difficult, but with the president's political will and backing, we are pushing through these reforms.
But how do you defend a policy that appears to tax, impose levies on Nigerians, which makes it look like the government is putting more burden on the poor and struggling average Nigerian? People are suffering. Really, literally, people are unable to breathe. Minister, one conversation that one has to be worried about is some of the friends that this government has been criticized to be keeping, which may have influenced some of the policies of this government. And a lot of people have criticized this government of towing the Bretton Woods institutions, burdensome policies, which have been analyzed as anti-people. Is there any commitment made to these institutions by this government in the face of apparent hardship they are causing the Nigerian people?
Generally, the view of Nigeria, as well as I think developing countries in general, is that the multilateral development banks, the so-called Bretton Woods institutions, are not giving the support that these countries, that these developing countries deserve. They are not giving the sufficient funding, they're not giving it cheap enough, and they're not giving it in sufficient scale to really assist in the development process. But having said that, they do form a veritable source of relatively cheap financing. International Development Association, IDA money is virtually free for about 40 years at maybe 1% or thereabouts. What Nigeria has done is encouraging the support and commitment of those who are able to fund cheaply. In 2 weeks' time, the board of the World Bank will consider a $2.25 billion package for Nigeria of, like I say, virtually free or almost grant funding, very, very low interest rate funding. And it is not being given under conditionalities. It's being given a large part of it, $1.5 billion of it is what they call development policy operation. Essentially, it is in recognition of what has been done to stabilize the Nigerian economy and get it back on the path to growth. And the funding will come virtually immediately, at least one half of it will come virtually immediately after that board meeting. That's what we are looking forward to. That is what we are confident we will achieve. And it just shows that we know how to use the multilateral development banks to our advantage. We don't agree with everything they say. We don't have to agree. But they are agreeing with our homegrown policies for trying to get Nigeria moving again. But in addition, we have learned, especially when interest rates around the world were high, that we need to rely on our own resources. The tax regime in Nigeria, without increasing taxes. In fact, it's got a planning to reduce some taxes, such as withholding tax, which are a lopsided burden on some companies. Despite that, we're looking to increase the amount of taxation that is collected, that is outside there, that belongs to government, that is to be collected. But in addition, Nigerians have the capability not just to fund in Naira, they have the capability to fund in foreign exchange. We have a large and successful diaspora. We just announced the other day that we're looking for a domestically issued US dollar bond where mainly Nigerians living abroad, working abroad, and Nigerians even living in Nigeria, but who have savings abroad, who have money in international banks abroad. We are putting before them the opportunity to come and support the effort of reviving and rebuilding the Nigerian economy through a historic bond issuance. And it's causing a lot of interest, a lot of excitement. We think it will be successful. And these are examples of the imminent, immediate, and we're talking about in July. So we're talking about immediate funding in foreign exchange that will assist in stabilizing the exchange rate, bringing down inflation, and helping us to get back on the path to growth. I must emphasize, though, that having reeled off so many things that are being done which are very, very substantial and very fundamental in correcting and making sure that government has enough revenue and government is efficient about its spending, the emphasis is on ramping up food production. The emphasis is dealing with food nutrition and food insecurity. And likewise, the emphasis is on helping small-scale businesses through grants, nano enterprises through grant funding. That is being rolled out. And it's being done in a manner which is, as I said before, a world-class standard where you identify biometrically the person that is the beneficiary, and then you pay them through a digital process which you can easily reconcile. And that is the emphasis, to make sure that we ramp up that's the speed and the scale of the help that is there. Even loans at 9% for medium-scale enterprises, up to 1 million naira for the smaller enterprises. And then for the larger enterprises, up to 1 billion naira funding at 9%, so that those manufacturing firms can invest, grow the economy, employ people, produce more goods that will help to bring down inflation. And as I say, for the largest enterprises, the government did sit down. The economic management team of the president sat down over 6 or 8 weeks now, sat down with the private sector, the Manufacturers Association, the Employers Association, the National Economic Summit Group, plus and the companies, and then with the subnational, with the governors. So the economic stabilization plan, which is going to be considered by Mr. President, and then its measures announced, is one that all stakeholders have played a part in creating, and we are sure it will be successful. And we're talking about a 6-month period in which to roll out these benefits and have them achieve the objectives and the aims of helping Nigerians, both consumers, both farmers and manufacturers.
Mr. Edun, let me jump in quickly. There are those who will argue that some of the economic policies of this government hasn't really worked out. At least evidence showing on the livelihood of the average citizen says it all. Opposition figures are saying this government is just embarking on trial and error economics. What do you have to say to them?
I would say that one of the most objective and impartial judges of economic policies are the rating agencies. Both in December last year, Moody's improved Nigeria's credit rating to a positive outlook. In May this year, early May, Fitch, another international rating agency, moved Nigeria's rating to positive outlook. These are third-party observers of what is going on. What I will always say is that it does take time to have the positive effects come through. And I will emphasize, inflation is falling and expected to fall further. Emphasis is being placed on what can bring it down, which is ramping up food production, providing fertilizer, providing seeds, and providing technical assistance to farmers, particularly the small-scale farmers who are the majority. And likewise, government is also investing. It is investing in infrastructure, and it has the support of private sector investors as well. And likewise, the the very, very sophisticated financial markets are coming to the table. The institutional investors are putting heads together to see how, within the laws, the guidelines, and the regulations we have, they can use the long-term savings, a portion of the long-term savings, to provide affordable mortgages, which will ignite construction in the housing sector. If you have a housing boom, you have an employment boom. These are the strategies, and these are the areas in which the government is looking to rekindle growth of the economy, while knowing that certain measures that have been used to stabilize it still need to feed through.
Minister, can you explain reasons for some businesses leaving Nigeria? It appears there is fear now about the Nigerian economic climate.
When we look at the economic climate, as we said, one of the major, particularly for the larger scale businesses, and I know you're talking about the multinationals, foreign direct investment, or foreign companies, one of the major drawbacks and one of the major impediments for them was they did not have a liquid foreign exchange market. Now we have a willing buyer, willing seller foreign exchange market. It is elevated. Maybe it's not at the levels we would like it to be, but it's when you get inflation down that you can stabilize the exchange rate and even get it coming down. Similarly with interest rates. And so that fight is on, and it is an improved environment for them, for big investors as a whole. And when you look at the oil and gas sector, today, as a result of recent measures on the fiscal side, executive orders signed by Mr. President have improved the investment climate for gas, which we have in abundance and which most people see as a transition fuel, which you can still be invested in on the way to greener and cleaner and non-fossil fuels. But at the same time, the investment climate for the deep offshore, where huge investment amounts are needed and where the technology is particularly sophisticated, and therefore you need the top companies in the world operating, the environment for them has been improved with a range of incentives. And it is estimated that in the nearest future, those measures will unlock $7 billion of foreign direct investment in the oil and gas sector. So when you talk about that sector, we are talking about the kind of areas in which there has been improvement, and the companies will always come and go, of course. Our aim is to not only keep them, but to have even more come in and invest. And we are sure that with the environment that we put in place, they will come. And as for the average manufacturing firm, there is a Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee that has worked hard to put in place a range of measures, some of which are included in the economic stabilization package that will be considered by Mr. President and the Presidential Economic Coordination Council. And therefore, they are measures which will help business, which are imminent as far as the timing of their introduction. So overall, we are in a difficult place, but the direction of travel is up and is towards improvement. And so every single day, every single month, we are looking at an improved situation economically for Nigeria.
In terms of foreign direct investment, FDI, how much has this government been able to attract since assuming office, and what are the prospects on how they would activate the Nigerian economy?
Well, I think in terms of figures, I've just said that the $7 billion is estimated is coming in from the oil sector. With another major improvement in the economic environment, the National Single Window Project, which really is an e-community and a trade facilitation platform that will totally revolutionize what goes on at the ports, make them much more efficient, make them much more cost-effective, and make us much more competitive in terms of our port operations. That too is expected to unleash another couple of $1 billion in economic benefits. And of course, Mr. President has been on the platforms around the world. Most recently, he spoke at the World Economic Forum in Riyadh. These are all about marketing, and everywhere he goes, he meets the businessmen. He has a trade and business forum to sell Nigeria to investors, and the prospects are good. We are expecting trade missions, groups of businessmen interested in investing. We're expecting them from a couple of countries imminently. One of the things that we need to do on our own side is that when you're dealing with private business, you need to have in place double taxation treaties, for example, investment promotion and protection treaties, for example. So we are tidying up our end in terms of those very, very important agreements as far as private investment is concerned. So the ball is in our court to a certain extent.
Let's talk about production issues. Now, Nigeria has largely suffered local production issues, which makes us basically a consumption economy. We know our economy can't survive on this forced and unproductive path. Is there any direct effort to make Nigeria a production hub rather than a dumping ground?
Certainly, and that starts with infrastructure. It starts with, like I said, the port infrastructure, the national single window, a major and relatively complex project to implement, and it was launched by Mr. President, thereby signaling and signifying the political will that is behind this project. Likewise, major infrastructure, rail, the Abuja rail was just, light rail was just commissioned. All these facilitators of transport, infrastructure, rail, they help enormously in making it much more competitive and feasible to produce locally. And don't forget the elevated food prices and the relatively expensive imports as a result of what has happened with the exchange rate. They lay the ground and they do incentivize in a big way local production, and we expect that as we stabilize the economy and hopefully bring down interest rates, the domestic investors, the local businessmen will be the first to go and grab these newfound opportunities. Look at the opportunity by the policy in compressed natural gas in particular and renewable energy in general. The policy of the Nigerian government, as announced by Mr. President in Council just a couple of weeks ago, is that there shall be no purchase by government of diesel or petrol vehicles or generators. They must be CNG powered, fueled, or they must be electric, or in some cases, solar powered. Any combination of the above. That in itself is a major incentive to investors to come in and benefit from guaranteed patronage by government. And of course, we must point out that there will be a 2/3 saving in terms of the cost of fueling a car by petrol, a bus by petrol, as opposed to by CNG. And we have already launched the CNG program. The buses are coming in, some fully built up, mainly also semi-knocked down parts. So you have assembly plants all over Nigeria producing these goods. And more importantly, you have the infrastructure for fueling going up around the country, as well as workshops where people can retrofit, they can convert their petrol cars to CNG fueled, probably a hybrid, where if worst comes to worst, you still use petrol, but they will be able to go for the cheaper, much, much cheaper CNG fueled vehicles. And of course, that should come down that should feed down to much more affordable public transport fares.
Since the removal of subsidy on petrol, one will imagine the price will be determined by market forces, but it appears the federal government is manually controlling the price, and experts are saying government is still paying some kind of subsidy on petrol. Can you explain and tell Nigerians transparently tonight and truthfully on that issue, because our import bills are different from what the federal government is saying.
Essentially, on May 29, 2023, Mr. President removed fuel subsidy, petroleum subsidy. In his own words, his famous words, petroleum subsidy is gone. That is an ongoing situation. You have the fuel price is determined by dynamics. The exchange rate plays a part. Domestic production of petroleum plays a part, because the higher you have production of crude, and it is going up. Mr. President met it about 1.2 million barrels per day. It is now 1.7 and going up. And of course, that is the initial source, the initial immediate source of foreign exchange. So to the extent that the fuel is imported, that means that the more supply of foreign exchange we have, of course, the lower the price, and therefore the foreign exchange impact of fuel is lessened. Clearly, it is a combination also of pivoting away from petroleum imports by the time we are now focusing much more on CNG. So it is an ongoing conversation, it's an ongoing process of ensuring that fuel subsidy is eliminated from the Nigerian economy. That is what Mr. President's intent is, and that is what is being worked towards. And as I say, we do have reason to be optimistic. Difficult as it is, those particular difficult areas now are what is being focused on, including, I've said, fuel pricing, to get down transport costs, and even to put purchasing power back in the hands of Nigerians. And the fight against inflation is a fight for all, because inflation destroys not just the value of savings and the value of investments, but it hurts the whole fabric of society. And that's why central bank, as an independent controller of monetary policy, is emphasizing it. Nonetheless, the commitment to ease those pains is a very, very robust one, and it is going to keep having beneficial results as we go down the road. Nigeria is on the right path.
All right, Minister, this is a very sensitive and a very touchy one, which of course affects the bottom line of the lives and livelihood of the average Nigerian citizen, especially the Nigerian worker. Of course, you heard that and you are part of that negotiation, and Labour is saying that they will go on nationwide strike from tomorrow. Talk to us about the minimum wage. Why is it so difficult for the federal government to come to terms with Labour's demands?
I think in a democracy, a very important process is the wage negotiation process, the right of unions to get together and to bargain collectively. That process is enshrined in law. It's ongoing. It's a arduous process. It's a complex and a difficult one, but with goodwill on all sides, we will come to a landing that benefits all Nigerians. It is difficult because whilst the worker deserves his wage, and given what's going on, they deserve a change. And in fact, by law, every 5 years, and maybe we shouldn't have to wait 5 years every time to set a new wage scale. The fact is that by law, it is a minimum wage. So it's not a wage. You're not setting a wage for federal government workers, for example. In a federation, you're setting a minimum figure that states must pay, that local governments must pay, that the private sector must pay, that small businesses must pay. To the extent they have the requisite number of workers, they can still be small-scale businesses. They would have to pay that. And it is a fixed figure, not a scale. So there are elements of how we have set the minimum wage in the past, particularly what they call the consequential adjustments, which given what Labour is asking for today, would be unaffordable across the board. And as I say, we have to focus not on the wealthiest payer. We have to focus on the fact that once it's enshrined in law, everybody that falls into the category of having to pay the minimum wage must pay it. And so therefore, the affordability has to be taken into account. And also, we probably have to also take into account the fact that there are other ways of buffeting and supporting cost of living of workers other than that particular wage scale. It's an ongoing conversation. I don't want to in any way prejudice the talks that are going on, except to say that with goodwill on all sides, we will reach a point which is beneficial to Nigerians and also allows the economy to function to the benefit of all.
Well, we have to leave it at that. Thank you so much indeed, Mr. Wale Edun, Honorable Minister for Finance and the Coordinating Minister of the Economy. Thank you so much indeed for your time.
Thank you for having me, Sheung.